Welcome back to another What Problem Are You Solving podcast, the greatest podcast in the world that you're watching right now. So thank you and glad to be here. Ty, Adam, welcome. It's good seeing you guys.
What's
We
up,
made it to
gents?
November.
the 80 degrees outside. Yeah.
It's so weird. It's so strange. So let's get right to the usual question of the week. Adam, what problem are you solving this week?
Multiple. Who do I talk to? There's multiple stakeholders. Call it. All right. Yeah. Multiple people I could talk to. Who do I start with? The college, university setting, beginner startups, what pays. Oh, and then the other one is, we started talking about this a couple weeks ago, but it popped up in one of our nerdy CusDev threads. The difference between a customer and a user and they're related. I think we're gonna have to come back to that conversation with our friend John S from Seattle, and I think he's in European time zone now. But yeah, it's like I know this is just content, but I'm all right. I'm convinced now that the customer. People keep pushing that you have to talk to you and start with your customer, but I think that falls under viability and not desirability. So now I'm moving back squarely in the camp again of what problem you're solving, who you're solving it for. It doesn't need to be your customer. It needs to be someone. Desirability and viability are different, and customer goes in viability. That's the problem I think I'm solving.
I don't think John would have an argument. John and I would have an argument with that in the cell phone model that we use of like who's the customer, who's the consumer of a cell phone for a teenager and their parents.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then we're gonna have to find someone who does disagree, because I know they're out there. So maybe not you two.
And then in the government context, right? You have the buyer, the user, and then you also have the one with the political influence. Right, because there may be someone in the organization that actually has maybe not the purse strings, but they have the right ear of the person on the purse strings, and you talk to this person, you'll get whatever you want, right? So, there's other ways to bring that in.
I think that's the magic of the mission model canvas versus the business model canvas.
Buy-in and support.
Right. That's the political box, and your beneficiaries are the first one. Your primary, secondary, tertiary, blah, 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 are also important in terms of beneficiary and not necessarily customers. Who benefits from this thing happening? If the person who actually gets it, using the U.S. government, Pennsylvania 1600, well, guess what? That decision, that thing that you offer, the value proposition that will subsequently flow down to a warfighter who is sitting somewhere trying to make sure that they don't get hurt. Hi, Wendy.
Hey, gang.
I was going to let you finish your thought, Ty.
Oh, so mission model campus.
So
I'm
happy.
sorry.
I'm so happy.
Nice to meet you, Wendy.
It's good to see you guys. How's it going?
Good seeing you.
It's going.
So we're kicking things off like we normally do with the question of what problem are you solving this week? And so while you think of your answer, we'll go over to Ty. Ty, what problem are you solving this week? It could be personal, professional.
Yes. So professional, I'm starting to solve my money problem.
Nice.
Yes, he is. So working on developing some relationships with a quasi-federal agency to help them figure out how to solve the problem of tech transfer, which could be absolutely fascinating, because there are billions of dollars being spent in developing technology, but it doesn't really transfer well out of the labs because people don't understand. It's not very well defined. By the way, I hate when people don't understand. Well, of course people don't understand, because I don't know who people is anyway. All right.
There's people.
Nuts.
Them,
whoever them is.
Whoever, they won't let me do it.
Exactly. But I think the process is not well defined, which means that those who want to take advantage of technology that's been developed on the citizens' dime that they can take advantage of to build businesses around, it's not well understood. And so we're being engaged to build that out. So that's a great problem. So I get paid, and folks can start to build out economic engines, right? The personal has to do with last week, but I know that that's part of what we're talking about this week. And just
What happened last week?
The election. I wonder.
Oh, right.
That happened last week, right? And so, as a person who tries to study leadership and not leadership in the individual, because I don't dynamically, the stuff that I've studied for the last 30 years suggests that followership is just as engaging and important as leadership, that it makes me wonder what's going on in terms of followership in the devolution of authority and how people take up their authority and they vest their authority in others, even and this is historic. This isn't just last week, but this is historic, that even at the risk of their own self and what is important for them and what is at risk, just because they devolve themselves of taking responsibility for how they manage their lives, and somebody will just do it for me. But what happens is that leaders get killed out of that, killed off, and not physically killed off. They get killed. It happens. Systems right themselves. And so I'm just trying to figure out what this means. That's all.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's heavy. We're going to keep it light.
Yeah.
For the rest of the show.
Take a few notches. Let's not go that deep.
Womp womp. Wendy, introduce yourself and tell us what problem you're solving this week.
Hey guys, Wendy, still remain as an entrepreneur, working through the
wait. Entrepreneur, I love it.
Yep, working through the exciting components of entrepreneurship. From a professional perspective, I've been working on, I built a program like a year and a half ago that marries together leaner canvas, lean canvas. And then because I find that entrepreneurs really struggle with the 2x2 risk matrix, I created a what I call their weighted risk canvas, where you take your leaner canvas and apply a logic to it so you can actually identify with color where your risk is. So it's more like a dashboard when you're looking at it.
Nice. I like that.
Kind of like pulling off of what has sort of been done in testing business ideas, where you're looking at the levels of confidence. I've added a fifth level and then use a sort of red to green scale, because I always feel like everyone understands red, yellow, green as a minimum standard with the confidence of what they built. I won an award here in Alberta for this program. It was rolled out throughout all of the province, but especially focusing on rural innovation, because I think that that's an area where there's a lot of struggle. And I think gently leaning into what Ty is talking about, I think when there are issues with economic development, prosperity in communities, people make decisions based on what they think will get them out of that. And I grew up in a community like that, so I understand that logic of community I grew up in. I think had the highest rate of unemployment and the lowest economic development in North America when I was a kid. And so it was pretty easy to see how people needed that support. And so I built this program and that went well. And now I've been running it with a large bank so that they can test out their product because banks have a high failure rate. So it's teaching them some sort of strategy around that. And then personally, the problem I'm dealing with is how to be in multiple places at once. I have a lot of things going on.
Teleportation.
Right now.
Good. Solve that one. That would be great.
Yeah, just like some time travel continuum problems, which I'm pretty sure I can figure that out.
Just knock that out this weekend.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I just need a little more pencil to work through this, I think.
Well, awesome.
That's where I'm at.
Thanks, Wendy. Good seeing you again.
Yeah.
I gotta plug my friend Aphid. Well, my friend's name is not Aphid, but Brandon's site from Techstars is Aphid, trying to solve that problem. I think it's aphid something. Go ahead, Craig. I'll find
Interesting.
aphid.
Craig, welcome to the show. Give us a quick introduction to who you are and what problem are you solving this week? And you're on mute.
Craig, you're on mute. You
still on mute.
And
there you go.
You barking, and I'm like, is that my dog in the background or is that somebody else's dog? But that's I'm a Wendy Muse wannabe. Wendy and I get to spend some time together. Mostly around this whole thing around first-time founders, trying to solve problems for first-time founders. First time you do it, it's hard. Second time around, it's easy. So Adam and I have known each other since, wow, Adam, what are we on? 9 years, maybe? We started something 10. We started something with students, which ended up getting funded to the tune of like $1.2 million Canadian that just recently ended with my departure from the college. So now I'm trying to find a way to carry some of that over. And we're working on some cool stuff around help a startup or help a founder out, depending who you talk to.
Awesome. Very cool. And as for me, this one's a fun one. I actually get to do some fun facilitation this week. I'm in a research and development tech industry, and I'm facilitating a workshop this week that I'm really excited about to help a lot of smart nerds from a variety of different disciplines kind of come in and brainstorm and do divergent thinking to figure out what they want to, what are their longer term goals, longer term meaning the next 2, 5, 7 years. So, because some of that stuff does take longer term research, but it's getting the good idea fairies going so they can lay out a roadmap. So
are you doing some play to win? What does winning look like? Backward casting? What are you doing?
I would love to have done that. I would have loved to have done that. They just these people are very busy people in lots of different disciplines, and so we had limited amount of time. So we're going to do a short version of that.
I remember in the place where you and I used to work, I did a piece where it's like, so what do you want to do? We want to do that. Well, what gets in the way of that? Well, these things get in the way. We'll say, what do you need to do to overcome
Then
that
what?
thing so you can get that? And then you work it back to, well, we need to like clip our fingernails. Right. You get them back to that.
Do that
this
next.
Is the first
exactly.
thing you need to do. What are you going to do tomorrow? Clip my fingernails. Yeah. Got it. Good work.
Well, this is great. So it's good to have everyone here. So feel free to just jump in the conversation anytime you'd like. And the way I'm going to posit this is it's kind of around the recent events of the U.S. presidential election, but in general, what if you had a startup that needed to do customer discovery to see if your customers aligned with you or not, and you deployed your product once every 4 years, right? Because that's basically what an election process is. And so the way that we do this, primarily to get information, data of our market research, is to do things like polling and exit polling and a variety of other ways to kind of get your finger on the pulse on what do our customers want. So I want to frame the conversation not in who won, who lost, who's better, who's worse, but more in the sense of how useful is the way that we do some of our political polling today in the mindset of customer discovery. And so any initial thoughts on that?
And before we dig in, we'll do a hard stop in 30 minutes.
Right.
No matter where we're at. And then we're going to talk about
politics. Oh, wait.
Then we're gonna
sorry.
Then we're going to talk about politics, religion, and SE. Yeah.
Oh, SEO.
Yes.
Search engine optimization, right? Yes.
Yes, got it.
Very good.
So let's do
The
that.
nitty gritty.
That's right.
Wendy's the best. You're not an entrepreneur. You're an entrepreneur comedian.
There's a version of it.
Awesome.
30 minutes. We get back to what pays, and we're going to talk about how once a month we're going to bring someone on. We're going to follow a structure for a full year. They're going to come on with 10 interviews. We're going to coach like we did with Brandon. I already got some good reviews on
Nice.
on that
really
episode.
good.
So I'm
Looking forward to that.
I'm just procrastinating what could be stressful, even though we're keeping it light. I'm just.
Yeah.
Do you think
Well,
that part
It's a
of
heavy.
part of the issue that comes with polling is sort of the same problems that exist when people are like, well, what if I just send out a survey?
Bingo.
The reality
Yes.
of people
Let's
lying.
go. Bingo, Wendy. Let's make it
You
happen.
know exactly where we're going. So what is wrong with surveying, Wendy?
Show of hands, who loves a good survey? No one. That's a survey in and of itself. And I remember I took university, I took a couple of research classes, and I remember my prof saying, if you're ever going to do a survey, make sure you ask your questions in reverse order, so that if people are just going down and selecting, like the whole way,
right,
you'll be able to spot the error because they're answering a negative question in a positive way. And so I think that because most people aren't super interested in giving a survey or doing a survey, similarly, I think lots of folks aren't super interested in polling or disclosing things sometimes.
Exactly.
I think that becomes the importance of why we need to have more proactive conversations or discovery interviews to actually understand what people care about, so that that's being built into any kind of platform in general.
Yeah. So if you're treating the election as the deployment of a product, right, and you did your market research through polling, right, they are very leading questions. They could be worded horribly, and your sample size, like we teach this in general, right, just getting the sample size right, getting the actual target customer right correct, getting that right, because you don't want to sway your results.
You have your early adopters as your base. You have
your fanboys, fangirls, exactly.
Your mainstream as your
and then the laggards who are like, oh, there's an election.
Right. So those are those are the either the
undecideds
or the low propensity. What are they calling them? Low propensity voter. Yeah. Yeah, those are your laggards. 100%.
But Craig put out there, and before you jumped on, Craig, we talked about verse as watch what they say, watch what they do, not what they say. And I think that you're onto something. And for me, as a 30-year student of organizational dynamics, it is interesting to me about what it says in the say-do gap. And so I was wondering what your thoughts are, Craig, because I think that you're onto something.
Well, and I think it's this, and I think about, if I was going to run an experiment, I would do some sort of card sorting around what are the things you care about the most. So this professor, I've forgotten who the professor was, that says, I can predict the election. I'm thinking, if we use past-oriented questions around behavior, which of the things are of the most importance when you voted in the past, and see who is leading in those things, like the economy or immigration. And now I don't want to say it's not that hard because I'm not a pollster, but I'm like, I don't think it's all that hard.
Right. And there's an art and a science, right, to, as an entrepreneur, crafting a good survey, right, but also as a pollster to really understand what is it that you're actually trying to ask or learn from the pollsters, other than just who you're going to vote for.
Well, to your point, Craig, there was a guy here in the States that said, here are the 13 predictors of what I think it has happened. And his apple cart, his predictors somehow got skewed. And I'm curious about where, and I don't think it's up for this group to say where it went wrong, but are those predictors similar to in a startup world? Here are the predictors that I have, but they just haven't figured out how to translate those predictors into actual behaviors. I see a trend. I have historic trends, but for instance, I remember my kid in 2021, right? 22, whenever ChatGPT popped out, and he was like, Dad, you got to play with this thing. This thing is stupid crazy. You just got to play with it. You just type some stuff in, it just creates this stuff. to all of a sudden now it's literally flipped worlds, right? I mean, when Altman can come out and say, hey, give me $10 billion for my next round. I got people can't get $25, right, for their next round, but he's like, give me $10 billion, and I just read somewhere where the Saudis are like dropping $100 billion into their AI ecosystem because they think that it's that important. $100 billion into something that doesn't come out of the ground in the Saudi Emirates. That's crazy. And so here you had this gentleman who had predictors that were based on technologies or a technological wave that was fairly predictable. You could fairly predict going from industrial to information and Web3, and all of a sudden this thing went phew, and just threw everybody out. And I'm wondering if the way that we have to teach people, or not teach people, it's not the right word, help people think about shifts in technology is the same way that the pollsters in the elections had to think about shifts in technology, but how they even consider what's happening in the world.
And maybe shifts in the priority of issues as well. I know that the Pew Research Group has done various studies over the years. I think there was a recent one done in July of this year on what worries the world and specifically what worries the U.S. And they had a ranked issue. And one thing that was really nice, I'll see if I can dig it up on the next breath of air that I take. They actually showed not only the ranking of the issues, but also blue versus red, how important that issue was to them. So again, it's not an all or nothing. There's the spectrum, like Craig and Wendy said, is like, wouldn't it be great if we could do a sort of a rank sorting, some card sorting of this, to really get a feel of the takeaway from the binary of this product A or product B, right? Really make it something a little bit more different.
Or also like a speedboat test, right? Where people could blankly put what the weight, like their biggest anchors are, what's holding back the US or any, like product, what's holding back, to be able to actually have individuals sort of ascribe what they think is the heaviest weight, so that you could aggregate that data and say, like across the spectrum, people feel the economy is the greatest weight. But then to have a follow-up question to them to say, what about the economy, right? Because like people's understanding of what the economy is so skewed and such a big spectrum of comprehension of what that looks like versus, I don't know, something much simpler that we would try and get them to put their finger on on the pulse of, right? So I think things like that, where it's too broad a statement to say just like the economy, right? What specifically or directly?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Inflation, unemployment rates, like being more specific.
Well, that's interesting you would say that, because I don't know if you know the name James Carville. So Carville is like what the Democrats couldn't understand is like, they're saying the economy, they're like, look at the indicators, stock market, pew, jobs rate, pew, going down, inflation coming down.
Inflation 2%, the lowest it's been in forever. Yeah.
And I thought, to your point, my folks, I called them the night of the election. And they're like, man, I don't understand. I said, they're like, and still eggs are $7 here in Pennsylvania. They're $7 a dozen, right? And where I live in Maryland, it's like $3 a dozen. Just, it hasn't gone up much. I mean, and I don't eat a whole lot of eggs, so I'm not worried about it. But in terms of understanding, if this was the election again was a startup and you're trying to understand, so what, to use the speedboat. So what about $7 eggs, right? That could they have taken the time to understand at what point to explain to people from the time that you got to go, because the eggs just don't appear in the grocery store, come from a chicken. Oh, by the way, you have to get the chicks to get the chicken to build the thing, to collect the eggs, and all of a sudden that whole supply chain leads up to a $7 egg. And to say, like we would, I hear you saying that you're worried about $7 eggs. Tell me at what point it hits you the most, to help unpack, like where in that understanding of the economy does it hit you most? In my pocketbook. Cool. Let's unpack what that means. Well, I want to be able to go on vacation. Cool. So what are the other pieces that go along with that, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to five
So
wide.
that's all. Well,
Five wide.
I think that you could, right? I think that you could have a conversation like you would with a customer, trying to unpack the customer behaviors and what they do and not what they say, to help unpack what the real symptomology is and not the real problem, not just the symptomology. Because I think that in some ways we got caught in symptomology. Hey, the economy, it's going great. It's on fire. You know, the world is saying the U.S. economy is the envy of the World Bank, IMF saying the U.S. economy is like light years ahead of everybody else. But the people, the customers, the consumer of the economy, the economic engine is like, man, I ain't feeling shit.
Whoa. So you're telling me people lie on surveys?
No, I don't think they lie on surveys. I think that they give indication of their experience on surveys.
Right.
They don't understand the questions they're being asked on surveys.
Exactly. Hi, Miss J. I ain't seen you in a minute. It's good to see
you.
Hi. Hello.
Yeah.
The last time you saw me, I had 1 child. I now have 4.
Oh, Lord.
Holy smokes. Welcome to the club.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting me, Adam.
Great. Yeah, so we'll keep go ahead.
Jade scaled.
Nice.
Hmm?
You scaled.
You scaled
up. You scaled up the number of kids. Yes.
Yes, I definitely did.
Exponentially, yeah.
But did she scale? Did she grow? Is my question.
She multiplied.
So Jade, we're shooting the breeze for the next 15 minutes on treating the political polling process as a startup, and then we'll have some fun at the last 15 minutes that we have together. So, but I want to get to something that Craig mentioned on the side. You said you got me thinking about testing business ideas from David Bland. You said specifically, look at that, just at the ready, man. A bunch of entrepreneur nerds here. Look at that. He's got his within arm's reach. Golly day. You know, one of these days we should get him one. So
yeah, right, Adam, right? Oh, some of us got
signed
a signed book.
Rub it in there, Mister. So tell us what you think about when we mentioned the word card sorting. It's at page 222 of his book. How do you think that could help? Make sure you unmute too. There. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think someone already mentioned this whole idea of what are the factors that people care about the most, and then picking each one so we can rank based upon what's on people's agenda. Knowing, and I think again, asking questions about the past, which things have dictated how you voted in the past, which things had the greatest impact on your vote. Put them in the 10. Although the hard part is maybe the economy ends up being 1, and then when we get to economy, maybe we know that that's the one. How do we break that 1 down into 10 different pieces and go, which of these 10 things about the economy are the most important? Inflation, unemployment rate, something of that nature. But getting to the 10, and then when you get to the 10, take the first one, and can you break it down into smaller ones and let people rank even what's inside, in this case, what we think was the economy.
Mm-hmm. And fun fact, did you know we could even do that with elections? Did you know it does not have to be a binary choice? There is the thing called ranked choice voting.
Yes.
That does exist.
I think they do it in Alaska.
They do it in Alaska and Maine, it looks like. There's some local options for others. But here's a little spread of how it is in the United States so far. So that way it's not picking the lesser of an evil, apparently. You can actually say, of the 5 options, if I can put them in the order that I wish they would be in, and then it through math magic it kind of works itself out.
So here's a question, and this goes to David. Craig's point. How does I'm going to pull it out away from our focus around the politics in terms of strictly in startup world? How do we measure irrationality? Right? How do we account for irrational behavior versus the rationality of what we would normally say. Is it this? Is it this? Is it this? There are things that you cannot account for that literally don't make sense, right? To a rational person, it's like, but that doesn't, not the idea that do things that don't scale, but that doesn't make sense. Why would you pick that? It seems counter to your economic, again, straight customer, not talking about the elections and using our framework to understand how we would study the elections or how we would approach the election. But how do you get to unpacking consumer behavior that is irrational?
You first need to define what's rational somehow objectively, which I think is hard. I also think there was revisionist history. Malcolm Gladwell has a good podcast about like owning a soccer team, and it's like this also goes back to, we'll see how many buzzwords I can throw in, but like what the job to be done, is it winning the league, or is it like showing off and being rubbing elbows with all the rich soccer player or football player? It's a great episode. So it's like, to make the example here, is it rationality, or is it teaching a lesson? Is it blowing it all, teaching people a lesson, or just it's interesting what the job to be done is of the vote, I think.
Same with Predictably Irrational, like he writes so often in Predictably Irrational about how we just make decisions that are, I can have $5 tomorrow, or I can have $25 next Tuesday. All right, I'm going to take the $5 tomorrow. We just like are so short-sighted in the logic of what serves us best.
I think you're both onto something around this, that marketing plays into predictive rationality, campaigns, and not just political campaigns, not national campaigns, how we treat our children, predictable. I don't have to treat mine anymore because Miss Jade and Mr. John, they got the kids now, and Adam, they got like a whole rack of kids. Mine are like 19 and 21. Nice. Yeah, Jade, both of them are college students. That's how long. Yeah, they both. Yeah. Wow. A fourth year senior and a second year sophomore. Yeah, buddy. Right. But I think that there's something to this that you can play into the irrationality to get people to, hell, I'm old enough to remember, Wendy, I don't know how old you are, but I know how old Adam is. And I think Craig, I'm just going to project age. That damn pet rock in the US, how people bought a sandstone and carried around like it was a bait. What?
Value creation. It was value creation.
No, exactly. So the question then becomes, how do marketing campaigns, how do startups and political campaigns create value in the users and or
even perceived value? It doesn't have to be actual value. Exactly. It just has to be perceived value. Right. By the way, a plug for The Irrational, the TV show on NBC. I'm loving it. Season 2 is even better than the first one. Adam just skips to the end anyway, so don't take his opinion. But really good episodes so far. Based off of the Predictably Irrational book. So if you like that kind of stuff, it's still going strong. And then there was something else I was going to mention, and I lost it. So I'll open it up for the next one.
Well, Jade brought up she put it in the chat. I'd love to hear your thoughts about what you put in the chat, Miss Jade.
Oh, no. What I said in the chat was like, if we're thinking about this from we're looking at this from the lens of like the political environment we're in right now and the presidency. Well, during Trump's presidency, human behavior was not normal, right? Nothing was normal. The stock market wasn't normal. And the way people bought cars, the way people went to the grocery store wasn't normal. So we didn't have an actual, we didn't have a real life startup with him. We had a startup that was like in a tube with everything, with no outside influences. Because if you think about it, you couldn't travel, right?
Yeah.
You couldn't go to the store. You couldn't, you didn't have to pay your rent. You didn't have to pay your car note. You had unlimited amounts of health care. There was an environment that was in his favor and an economy that was handed over to him in good standing, right? So we don't actually know with this founder how he will actually respond to the current environment, which is
different
normal
world
human behavior.
Right.
We just don't know. We do know that he acts like a founder with unlimited amounts of friends and family cash. That we know. But we also know that as a founder, the amount of money you have, that doesn't guarantee that you'll have an amazing startup. That just means you have more money to burn.
It does. It means you have a longer runway.
Sorry. And more often than not, money is not what you need. You need a better plan. You need to go back. You need to speak to your customer. You need to know what the customer wants so that you could provide that thing, which in more than 9 times out of 10 isn't what we think it is, right? And so he thinks at this moment that he's going to provide the American people, but with what they want. But he didn't survey everyone.
Right.
He has a 72 million people on his wait list, but he hasn't. He has what do they say at all the demo days? Like I have 72 million people on my wait list, but churn. Although churn actually, I can't make that argument because churn is low. So
it's interesting. Well, actually, Jay, they brought up an excellent point that I had forgotten. Is we also have to consider context, right? So you can have the perfect product delivered in the wrong time, or in the wrong region, or in the wrong environment, or to the wrong person, or even the right person in the wrong context, right? Because I'm a different person at work than I am at home, right, etc. So that when you look at the polling averages between the two, and there's this black line here where Biden withdraws, you can see that there's a gap between these, and then they kind of flip when Kamala becomes the running mate, or the leading candidate for the Democratic Party. And so when you poll someone right before Biden withdraws or right after Biden withdraws, right, you're going to get a different response. People change their mind. Back to the irrational part, right? Well, maybe what I said yesterday, I will do something different today. And so that goes all the way up to day of the polling, right? As to walking in and maybe you were leaning one way and there was something that changed. So I think that's fascinating to see. To your point, whether it's during his last term or even weeks before, the election, that the customer base is fickle and can change their mind and can swing one way or the other. So same is true for your product.
Jade said something I thought was really interesting because with the Harris, you talked about the way if you put Trump as a founder of the startup and the way that you characterized it. There's also something to be said for having lots of enthusiasm that capitalizes your campaign, but you still didn't have enough conceptual runway, contextual runway, or enough to change people's mind. In 3 months, she raised $1 billion, put together a campaign in 3 months that was, for all intents and purposes, was super competitive, right? Didn't win, but was super competitive. In 3 months, $1 billion and rallied these folks around her to be able to do this. Should not have been able to do that. Anybody else would have lost. I mean, would have just got waxed, right? Just completely waxed. She didn't. She lost. And so, what does that say about in a startup way that, no pun intended, as a startup, that you have a well-funded startup that just doesn't land in the market at the right time?
But don't you feel like she didn't do great customer discovery? That's like if I go to Atlanta and I'm like, don't you think that we should have reparations? And everyone is like, yes. I'm in Atlanta where the Black population is 85%. And then I go right outside Atlanta and I poll those people. She didn't poll the people outside of Atlanta. She was like, who cares about female reproductive rights? And it was like Black women and all these other women and some men. And that never polled differently. Reproductive rights never polled differently. So I never understood how she was just running on this. Men, like people didn't, and I don't want to make a blanket statement. People did not care about my eggs. They cared about the price of eggs. And I felt like that was very, very clear. So I'm here in my house with my 4 kids, like, you don't see this, and I'm screaming at the TV. But it was like she had that Atlanta group. You know what I'm saying? She had the people who were hyping her up. It's like when we go to a conference that's on maternal health, everyone's like, this is the best thing ever. And everyone looks like me. And then we get to the CMO and he looks like Adam. No, sorry, Adam. But he doesn't really understand what Black maternal health is. And he's like, like, no, the person my customer is Adam, not his nurses, not his doctors. It's actually Adam. And I can only speak to that because, by fire, right? But that's what she did.
Plugs are allowed. Plugs are allowed. You don't have to use the metaphor. You can say what it is when you're at the conference.
She Matters.
Thank you.
I'm the CEO of She Matters.
Thank
a Black
you.
maternal health company, and we decrease Black maternal morbidity by through technology and education. So this election was very important for everyone, but it was extremely important for us because it's kind of it made a lot of decisions for us. But I truly felt that she just kept running with something that the people kept saying, that's great, but and it's like when you don't want to hear it because you don't want to change your idea. You don't want to, and I always say to be a great founder, you have to care about the outcome more than you care about your plan to get the outcome done, right? And so she didn't want to or the Democratic Party, I don't know, I'm not there. They didn't want to steer away from their product. Their product was like reproductive rights. And it was like, no, like everyone's telling you into the White House, that's not it.
That's a great point about, looking for confirmation bias, as you're a founder trying to sell something, like everyone agrees with me. Okay, well, who else have you talked to? So that's a fantastic point. So thank you. Bring that up.
Right, so
we're at time, Adam. So I want to make sure we.
I knew. We'll keep going a little bit. So here we got customer discovery. We got empathy. We didn't get to pivots, so I think pivoting is important in this part of the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Crossing the chasm is important in this part of the conversation. There's also that idea of what got us here isn't going to get us there. So almost where startups have to fire their early adopters because they're almost, either the CEO who started off gets fired. So I think there's a couple more metaphors we can milk out of this, and then we'll.
Yeah.
But yes, no matter where we are at 10:30, we're done. We'll keep. Because we got to help.
Do you think Biden to Harris was the pivot?
Yeah, I'm like, isn't that the pivot?
That's probably the biggest pivot for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's pivots, and then there's iterations based on the features that they were hearing in the.
So if they actually if they held a Democratic primary, then you could do smaller iterations, right, to weed out. Or promote other voices, right? So it was a hard pivot, and sometimes you got to do that as a founder, and sometimes it doesn't pay off. So,
this is a fascinating conversation to me. I just want to step out and get on the balcony a sec, but this is a fascinating conversation to me that you have 6 people who help founders kind of get to, and I love this. Jade Ash said. He has that thing, love the problem, not the solution, and that stuck to the solution and never understood the essence of the problem. And what's fascinating to me is that we're having these conversations and layering, not business, because this isn't about business. This is a social scientific endeavor, and we're laying it using our words, our context on understanding what happened last week. I love it. I just want to give y'all some big ups on that. It's a powerful conversation.
No, this has been great, but I definitely want to give Jade, Craig, and Wendy any final thoughts on using this metaphor of the 4-year startup in politics. Anything else you want to add? Because I think you've all three been spot on all night with where I was hoping this would go. So
I just wonder if anybody truly understands the problem.
The problem is getting men to vote for a female president.
Is that the problem?
I think that is a large part of the problem.
A lot of women voted for him too.
Men not ready to vote for a woman.
Interesting.
I think the problem is the Peter principle.
That's my hypothesis. I don't know how to test it yet, but that's my hypothesis.
I'm gonna follow Jade real quick, and create a hypothesis that's it's intersectional. It's not just the misogyny. There's race. There is classism. There's ableism, all tied up in this. I saw this thing today that this guy in Australia is saying, I use the N-word in my house. He is not just some guy. He is a senator in the Australian government. And he said it because, oh, look what Trump is able to do. Right?
Ty, hear me, and then I'm going to be quiet because this is the Leo in me, right? I think it's a bit deeper than that. I think that we've been positioned as the moral beacon, the beacon of light, and that's not really who we are. So nobody truly understands the problem, right? Not even Trump, because here he is now talking about gender affirming care. Those still aren't the problem. Yeah. People keep trying to run on from a moral standpoint.
That's interesting.
Not what we are. We're a capitalist society. So the moral majority comes in for what? That's not anybody. That's not the problem. The problem is money. And so when you try to run on anything else, like she did, she really had a campaign about the best of who we are. No.
No one cares.
That's not the problem.
It's interesting. That's a great way to close out that segment.
Maintain systems.
Yeah.
Maintain the systems to get paid. I'm sorry, John. Please. You're the producer
Adam,
tonight.
let's round out the rest of this session with what you want to do. Why do we have these esteemed guests on?
Well, it was all true. It was just to get them. There was no future. It was just for this conversation. All right. What's
free pizza? Didn't you offer free pizza?
Free pizza. Yeah, I need a transition.
It's in the mail.
I need a transition here. All right. A couple calls with some real founders. We're gonna do Craig, why don't Craig and Wendy talk about MVP Mondays for 2 minutes, and then the plan is once a month at a minimum. I think we're gonna have more demand, but we'll see what the market tells us. But we're gonna have some rules, and that's what I want. I think it's not just helping any founder out. You have to bring receipts. 10 interviews gets you on the show. 10 customer interviews, talking to your customer, gets you feedback from this panel, probably 5 or 6 more people at one time. So it is a rich environment. Craig and Wendy talk about MVP Mondays, and then it's not even MVP because it's not product based, it's problem based. So I think the feedback will be, who'd you talk to? What'd you learn? What are you going to do next? We don't have to get there yet. We have a couple weeks before our first guest, but that's why we only saved 5 minutes for the end, because we're not there yet. But are we ready? Are we ready to just roll this out? Should it be to students? Should it be to first-time founders? Should it be anyone who's done 10 interviews? Should it be just like Brandon, where they have a product, but they're trying to, who do we want? Who are we trying to get for our first guest?
Wendy, you want to go first?
Sure. MVP Mondays was the best way to spend a Monday at lunchtime. We used to block out the full hour, and 2 entrepreneurs would come for half an hour each, and they would talk about what they were trying to propose with their business idea. And there was a group of us, primarily Craig, Adam, Brandy, and myself, who would give them feedback on what they're trying to do and how to actually get an MVP so that they're sure that they have a problem worth solving, which is most entrepreneurs just love the solution that they've dreamt up for a problem that they think is really important for everyone. But how do we know that without doing that kind of work?
And I think we were like some folks in Turkey. Adam, who are the folks? Brutally Honest Mentors.
Ozan and some Founders Institute folks in Turkey.
Right, and I think this sometimes is the challenge. And I've had to learn, especially now in the role that I'm in. I ask the question on a scale of 1 to 10, how honest can I be with my feedback?
Ooh.
And it almost forces people to say 10, or sometimes you get those that have watched, I forget what the movie was, 12, where you turn the volume up to 12. Because what ended up happening is, I don't know if I was the Kevin O'Leary, but I'm always being as candid and as honest as possible, because I wanted people to leave knowing their idea was shitty and they needed to change something to get money. So I think making sure that people who come on know we're not there to pat them on their back. We're there to be as helpful as possible, to spend as little money as possible if your idea isn't going to work.
So do we want to know, what's the first question? If someone shows up with 10 interviews, do we want to know what they learned? Do we want to know what their idea is? Do we want to know how they're interpreting the data? Or do we want to know what they're doing next week?
Of these 10 interviews, how many were with total strangers and you did not ask a single question about the future?
Okay, that's your first question. Jade, what's your first question? Someone shows up with 10 interviews. What do you want to know from this founder? Because we're going to really test this in 2. What's our first December? I guess it's 3 weeks from tonight, or 4 weeks from tonight, 5 weeks from tonight. Jade, what's your first question?
How did you gain access to these people? Like, where did you find them?
Nice.
Love it. Yep.
The dinner table. They're all the ones who love me. That's the problem.
Yes.
I would want to know. I would want to know, of these 10 people, how many of them agree with you? Agree with your problem?
And I was thinking of the opposite question is, how many broke your head on telling you something that you did not expect or completely invalidated your hypothesis?
Because John, my follow-up question would be just that.
Yeah.
Because if you 7 out of 10 people agree, I'm like, BS. I'm throwing a red flag.
Yeah. Tell me about those 3 then. Yeah.
Exactly. Because I would be interested. I think the 0.5, not the first one, the 0.5 question is, what problem are you trying? What problem do you think you were solving? Okay. How many people agree with you? Or how many people didn't agree with you, I think is the counter.
So that's the other reason why I wanted to do this, and I wanted to be proactive, because you've seen, in addition to getting tonight's panel, you've seen all my forms, and you've seen what is the minimum? We say 10 interviews, but what else do we want to know before? Is it, do we need their initial hypothesis? Is it just their interviews? Even if it's their interviews, we've had Mike Vladimir and Nation Startups on the show. He's demanding audio files, which I don't not disagree with. I agree with Craig. Craig, I fixed it when you say you're not wrong. You're right. I agree with Mike on the audio. It's harder to get. So what do we actually? That could be the last question of the night. Yes, 10 interviews sound like, oh, did you do 10 interviews? Like, are we asking for 10 good interviews? Are we asking for audio? Do we want their hypothesis and what problem they're solving clearly stated, written? Do we want it written in private? Do we want to post it on LinkedIn? Like, what? We're disciplined this very one time. What's the minimum? They get 10 mentors at their disposal. I think sometimes I especially am too timid in enforcing the rules, even on MVP Mondays. I agree, it was the best thing ever. We didn't always, sometimes it was supposed to be for ranking their assumptions, but then it was sometimes just turned into a feedback fest, which is totally fine. If we want to at least try to hold ourselves to a standard, what is the absolute minimum that they must submit before taking the stage? And then we're done.
Jade?
I don't know, like submit, like, are these actual, these are just ideas, or are these actual, like, are they companies? Like, are they actual startups? Are they just ideas?
Assuming you can give a separate answer for each one. Assuming it's just an idea, what's the minimum? And assuming they're companies, what's the minimum?
I think if it's an idea, at least minimum, like, if you have an idea and you're doing a startup, you probably have a deck, right? Like, send your deck, like, so we can ask pointed questions to keep things tight. Like, oh, we looked at this and they at least have to do this. And if it's an actual startup, like their website, maybe they don't want to send their deck. Maybe they send their website. It's an actual functioning business. And then we can all take 5-10 minutes, look at what they're doing. That way our questions make even more sense. They all make sense. You don't have to know everything, but just a little bit of like, oh, I noticed blah, 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 like, could give better feedback. Like, a deck could be very helpful, because then if they say, this is the question I asked, and they're like, well, this doesn't have anything to do with your business, it gives us a little context as well. I don't know. Just my thoughts.
What's the purpose of them coming on? Because I'm getting back to Craig. I'm going to be brutally honest. Are they coming to get some coaching, or they just want to, like, you're so nice, I love you guys?
Well, I think
why would they spend 50 minutes with 6 people that could easily charge $300 a piece for an hour's worth of consultation?
The initial premise, and nothing, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face or until they run for president, I guess. The initial plan, coming on with 10 interviews, and they're coming on for analysis. So did you talk to the right people? Did you talk to who you said you were going to talk to? Where'd you find them? To Jade's point, were they not friends and family? To Craig's point. But most importantly, did you hear what we're hearing? So it's the analysis of the batch of interviews is the premise. So it would be almost a pre-MVP Monday. It would be what problem are you solving, and how do you know? Oh, I talked to these 10 people. That's the premise. Now we're going to get people who come on and are trying to solve a pricing problem. Or we're going to get people who come on who don't even know, who talk to 10 different people. We're going to get people who come on who did the 10 interviews, but it was all people, couldn't be 10 of their mom, but maybe it could. I don't know. Is that possible? For episode 1, are we demanding 10 interviews? Are we demanding 10 interviews plus a deck? Are we demanding 10 interviews and a promise that it wasn't friends and family? There's no right answer. We're just spitballing.
I think, Ty, you were saying, what do they get out of it? They get their, like, do you know the problem you're solving for? That is the hardest question ever. So if they walk away with knowing the problem that they're solving for, that is worth so much money. That's like 6 weeks in an accelerator. Like, we'll be able to tell them, like, we know, like, after we hear the feedback, because what happens is you're like you're hearing all this feedback from the people you're interviewing, and it's like, I don't know, I think I'm solving for people who want to wash dishes. And like, no, you're solving for people whose hands don't want to get wet. And like, you can't see it sometimes, so that's the benefit, right?
I think the gentleman, Brandon, the gentleman has it was, if you haven't seen it, Jade, Craig, or Wendy, we interviewed him last week, and he's blind, and he's created a way to help people navigate maps. And we just kind of we didn't go after him. We're like, but what about this? What about this? What about? And he was like, oh yeah, I thought I was doing this. And he actually kind of like, oh wow. To your point, Jade, you don't want blind people. We want people who are running running programs. That's the people you need to be going after. You can't make money off of that. You want people who can actually give you data and say, please help this map because we're going to make money off of this thing for people who are blind, and it'll help us improve our economic position. And he was like, oh, I got some work. He literally emailed Adam and John. I don't know if he texted all of us on. He was literally like, I got some work to do. I have a lot more customer discovery I have to engage in. It was fascinating. And we weren't like beating him up. It was just like, to your point, Jade, what problem are you solving again? I hear that, but there's a whole thing that's out here for you.
Awesome. So stay tuned. Yeah, how we evolve that. That'll be fun. And this has been a great episode. So thanks to our esteemed panel. Yeah, an hour flies by when you have a lot of fun. So again, thank you all for coming on. This has been great. Just to hear the diverse perspectives, and hope to see you back real soon. So until then, have a good week. Take care.